I'm gonna start, and then people will continue to drop in as they show up. But I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us for the exciting and long-awaited event and the modified presentation of the event of the Bob Stocksdale International Excellence in Wood Award for 2019. I know, I mean, we have scheduled this date for a long time now. It's the second, well, actually, it's the third date that we put on the schedule. We pushed it back a number of times, but I believe that we had set our date long before Major League Baseball set its date. So we were not going to adjust this date for Major League Baseball. So I'm just really pleased that you're all here with us this evening. It means a lot, even though it's a tough competition between us and Dr. Fauci throwing the first pitch, but I hope you'll stick with us. So my name, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jennifer Nava-Milliken. I'm the Artistic Director for the Center of Art and Wood. The Center for Art and Wood is located in Philadelphia, but it has embraced, studied, and documented wood by artists all over the world from its founding in 1986. Since then, it has nurtured and advocated for the innovation of art and wood through collaborative residencies, exhibitions, learning and outreach, and documentation. As I mentioned, I'm really grateful to all of you for joining us tonight to celebrate this annual event, the recognition of excellence in art and the material of wood in the form of the Bob Stocksdale International Excellence in Wood Award. I am very, very thrilled to announce that the laureate for 2019 is Humaira Abid, who is actually with us tonight. So before I go into that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Tom Geiler from Winterthur Museum, Gardens and Library, who is our partner for this award event. This is the second year in a row that we've partnered with Winterthur. So I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Tom Geiler.
Thank you, Nava. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. Good evening, and on behalf of Winterthur Museum, Garden, Library, welcome to Winterthur from home. Just imagine you're at Winterthur for the Bob Stocksdale International Excellence in Wood Award ceremony. As Nava said, my name is Tom Geiler, and I'm Assistant Professor of History and Public Humanities at Winterthur. Today, I'm coming from Thousand Island Park in upstate New York, one of my many different offices I've inhabited since March. My ever-changing backdrop for those that know me. We're once again thrilled to partner with our friends at the Center for Art and Wood for this wonderful event. While we so wish we could be doing this in person amidst the garden, grounds, and collections at Winterthur, we're really happy we can press on via Zoom. A word of thanks is in order first. First to Nava, Katie, and the whole staff of the Center for Art and Wood, who have truly made lemonade out of lemons in putting this event on and allowing Winterthur to be part of it once again, even though remotely. I also want to thank our speakers tonight, Humaira and Emily, for showing us true excellence in all facets of their work. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you for taking some time out of your summer to join us here tonight. Winterthur and the Center for Art and Wood have partnered on numerous initiatives and events over the years, ties that have only strengthened in the last 4 years. We're thrilled to have two wonderful speakers here tonight. Our honoree, Humaira Abid, a groundbreaking inspirational artist and one of my former students, and an emerging scholar of the field of material culture studies, Emily Whitted. This event is a testament to the fact that art can be such a source of inspiration, hope, and a mode for finding solutions in these turbulent times. Thank you so much again for being a part of this, and we hope to see you back at Winterthur and the Center soon. Nava?
Thank you so very much, Tom. And I just want to echo what you mentioned about how fruitful this partnership has been over the last 4 years, even since before my arrival at the center. Albert had established ties with Winterthur long ago, and fellows had come in and taken a look at the collection and made assessments. And so this is just a continuation of that partnership, but to be able to do this on an annual basis is just really exciting for us, particularly because it means that we get to to honor and shed some light on a promising young artist, which is why we're here tonight. So I just want um, to say a few words to give context to this award and what it means. So if you're all with me, you should see a photo of Bob Stocksdale turning an enormous bowl in his home studio in Berkeley, California. The annual award in his name was launched in 2016 through the initiative of an anonymous donor in order to spotlight and encourage an emerging or mid-career artist whose work embodies the values and qualities that distinguish Bob Stocksdale's unique and very long and hoary body of work. Now honoring our fourth honoree, the Bob Stocksdale Award for International Excellence in Wood consists of an award of $1,000 to the artist, accompanied by a research lecture by a select Winterthur Fellow or graduate. This year's award represents an inaugural effort to adjudicate by committee. So I want to take a moment to thank those committee members for their time and expertise. They are, firstly, Christine Knoke, who is the Deputy Director of the Mckee Museum in San Diego, California, Michael Monroe, Director Emeritus of Bellevue Arts Museum and the Renwick Gallery in the Smithsonian Museums, Michael Puryear, the New York-based artist and furniture maker and 2018 Wingate ITE Residency Fellow, Kevin Wallace, the executive director of the Beatrice Wood Foundation in Ojai, California, and then myself, representing the Center for Art and Wood. About Bob, if you don't already know Bob Stocksdale, then you probably haven't come from the field of American woodturning. But just in case you're one of those few people, Bob Stocksdale was an internationally renowned pioneer of contemporary woodturning. He was known for his striking lathe-turn bowls and credited with sparking the revitalization of the craft of woodturning and its growing significance as an art form. His signature work comprised smooth, elegant bowl forms, many that were formed from exotic wood types that emphasized the natural color and distinctive grain pattern and often distinctive flaws of the wood. Born in 1913, Bob grew up on his family's farm in Warren, Indiana. He began working with wood as a teenager repairing furniture, and he taught himself how to turn on the lathe, as legend has it, using an improvised engine from a Maytag washer. Drafted into the US Army in 1942, Bob claimed conscientious objector status and spent the duration of World War II in civilian public service camps. It was in one of these camps where he turned his first bowl, and he never looked back. Following the war, Bob moved to Berkeley, California, and became an early member of the Arts and Crafts Cooperative Incorporated, or the ACCI, which was an influential cooperative gallery showing work by designer craftspeople. He met and married the noted weaver and fiber artist, Kei Sekimachi. Together, they helped cultivate and sustain an influential center for the development of the Bay Area designer-maker movement of the later mid-20th century and going forward. And here are two works that they collaborated on that are in the center's collection. On the left, you see a work of Bob Stocksdale's, and then on the right, you see a hornet's nest paper bowl made from Bob's bowl form. Bob passed away in 2003, but his awards and acknowledgements were many. He was inducted as a fellow of the American Crafts Council. He made an honorary lifetime member of the American Association of Woodturners, or AAW. He was honored as a California Living Treasure and recognized as a Master of the Medium Award by the James Renwick Alliance. His work is held in the permanent collections of many notable public institutions, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, the Museum of Arts and Design in New York, the Contemporary Museum of Art in Honolulu, and LACMA, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art in Los Angeles, as well as in the Center for Art and Wood. I just wanted to go back and name our previous three Stocksdale Award winners. In 2016, the inaugural winner was Jacob Weisflog of Hildesheim, Germany. In 2017, the award honored Dean Pulver of Taos, New Mexico. And in 2018, the awardee was Ben Streer, who is based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So now we arrive at 2019. Humaira Abid was born and raised in Lahore, Pakistan. She immigrated to the United States in 2008 and now lives and works in Seattle, Washington. Humaira received her BFA in sculpture and miniature painting from the National College of Arts in Lahore in 2000. She has exhibited in galleries and museums worldwide. Her work has been published in books and other print media, and she has been the recipient of prestigious awards and grants. She has lectured widely and participated in residencies and symposia around the world. Humaira's work is distinct in that it combines the disciplines of wood carving and traditional Mughal miniature painting. Through her depictions of objects and figures, Humaira articulates themes that are often provocative and challenging, amplified by her manipulation of heritage practices and the materiality of wood. Her carved and painted works, known for their virtuosity and exquisite detail, have been exhibited in museums and galleries around the world, including at the Center for Art in Wood. And you can see an exhibition of her work on view at the center in our gallery, which I am very proud to say has been open since July 16th, 1 week already, Thursdays through Saturdays. And so you can come and view the exhibition yourself if you live in the region, or if you make a special trip out, continuing through the beginning of October of this year. So we're really very pleased to be able to stay with Humaira's work for an extended period of time. Now I'm going to introduce Emily Whitted, who is a Lois F. McNeil Fellow in the Winterthur Program in American Material Culture. She received her BA from the University of Richmond, Virginia in 2016, and her research interests include historic textiles, contemporary Appalachian craft, and the intersections of craft, gender, and social justice. Emily's thesis, The American-Made Stocking, investigates the 18th century knit stocking industry in Germantown, Pennsylvania. Having completed her master's degree in American material culture in May of this year, in the midst of the pandemic, so we have to congratulate her for that, Emily plans to begin studying for her PhD at the University of Massachusetts Amherst in the fall. So congratulations, double congratulations, Emily. And Emily is going to be speaking about Humaira's work in the context of the legacy of Bob Stocksdale. So before I hand it over to her, I'd like to thank again Winterthur Museum, Garden and Library for its partnership in holding this, co-hosting this award commemoration. Particularly, I am so grateful for the enthusiastic cooperation of Dr. Tom Geiler, whom you've met, the Assistant Professor of History and Public Humanities at Winterthur, whose facilitation and input made today possible. I also want to thank Humaira, with whom I've had the privilege to work on various projects for nearly 6 years, if we can believe that. During that time, I've seen her work develop and deepen, and her voice rise and gain focus and confidence. Not many people, artists or otherwise, dedicate themselves to their work with the conviction and consciousness that Humaira does, while maintaining an astounding level of perfection with regard to her craft. It is an incredible honor to recognize her work along Bob Stocksdale's. My only regret here is that they're not able to meet in person. That would be a wonderful conversation to take part in, and I know they'd have so much to share. I do want to thank the staff and the board at the Center for Art in Wood, some of whom are here today, who make what we do, including the encouragement of the field's most exciting and intriguing artists through programs like this one, possible. And thank you all for coming today. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Emily Whitted. Emily, it's all yours.
Great, thank you so much, Nava. Let me just set my screen up here. And hopefully you all are seeing the slide. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your evening to attend this event. As Nava mentioned, my name is Emily Whitted, and I am recently graduated from the Winterthur Program in American Material Culture. I am thrilled to be here today to help celebrate the work of artist and woodcarver Humaira Abid, this year's recipient of the Bob Stocksdale International Excellence in Wood Award. This award is bestowed each year to an emerging or mid-career artist whose body of work unites quality of craftsmanship and respect for materials, and whose artistic innovation pushes forward the field of art in wood. I was lucky enough to see Humaira's work in person at the Center for Art in Wood earlier this spring prior to the pandemic, when they hosted her exhibition, Searching for Home. After studying the moving and ingenious detailed forms she creates out of wood, I was overjoyed at the chance to delve more deeply into her work, and I'm honored to share that today with you. From the onset of her career, today I'll be situating Humaira's work in relation to the work and legacy of Bob Stocksdale, who was widely known for turning thin wooden bowls out of exotic woods long before the international field of wood turning was formally established. Bob's beautifully turned wooden forms honored the integrity of its material, showcasing natural grain patterns, the epitome of functional elegance. It is of particular note that this year's award honors a female woodworker, when woodworking has long been a historically male-dominated field, and in particular, it has been given to a female woodworker who remains committed to articulating universal and highly personal experiences of global women in her work. Bob Stocksdale and Humaira Abid, operating in contrasting time periods in the field of woodworking and educated in contrasting conditions, have honed their respective commitments to wood, and in doing so have pushed the field of wood art forward. It is my hope that after my talk, you will have gained a better understanding and appreciation for Humaira Abid's body of work and recognize the threads connecting her wood art to the principles of high quality design and material knowledge embodied in the work and legacy of Bob Stocksdale. From the onset of her career, Humaira has exhibited a tenacity that many women must possess in order to succeed in male-dominated fields. Quote, "I enjoy doing things which are challenging and look impossible," Humaira says, and her initial path to becoming a woodworker might have looked that way. Growing up in Lahore, Pakistan, in a culture with more traditional patriarchal expectations for women, Humaira determinedly chose to pursue art against the wishes of her family, attending the National College of Arts and graduating with honors in 2000. After graduation, she was immediately invited to return to the NCA as a faculty member, where her artistic career continued to develop, and she gained acceptance from her family for her choice of career. Humaira immigrated to Seattle, Washington in 2008, and her work has since been recognized and supported by a variety of fellowships and awards, including the Community Choice Award by the International Museum of Women, and most recently, the Artist Trust Art Innovator Award in 2019. Humaira's current work can be roughly divided into two modes of artistic expression: woodworking and miniature painting. Neither were traditional mediums for women. In addition to her attraction to wood's material properties and behaviors, Humaira chose sculpture as her main medium because she knew the majority of sculpture specialists were male, and women were actively discouraged from pursuing it because it was deemed too physically difficult. Her minor in art school, miniature painting in the Mughal tradition, was also a historically male-dominated artist practice. To many, these two artistic practices may seem incompatible. Humaira has commented on this, remarking, quote, "Sculpture and miniature painting seem to be very different, but that is not my experience in working in them. The intensive labor, precision, and finely tuned aesthetic values of miniature painting have helped to improve the execution of my sculptures," end quote. In wooden objects, her masterful carving of minuscule details, such as lace on the edge of a bra or a set of wheels on the base of a carved set of luggage, prove this theory correct. Her hybrid objects of both woodwork and miniature painting are fresh and captivating, as seen here in her work Istri series. A carved mahogany iron with colored veneer projects a miniature painting from its face. This combination is rarely seen in the field of wood art, which speaks to Humaira's innovative approach. Before we delve more deeply into Humaira's work, I'd like us to peer back in time to explore previous wood artists who helped develop the field of woodworking, beginning with Bob Stocksdale, so that we can better contextualize her work within woodworking's long history. When asked about the wood art he created, Bob Stocksdale reportedly answered, quote, "I make bowls, period," end quote, downplaying his incredibly successful career as a wood artist spanning over the latter half of the 20th century. Widely known in the world of wood as the father of American woodturning, Bob Stocksdale earned an international reputation for his turnings, which were primarily bowls, using exotic woods and their natural shapes to create utilitarian works of wood art. His turn works were highly prized collectible pieces, with many collectors admitting that when it came to Bob Stocksdale's bowls, it was impossible to have just one. Many of his works reside in private and public collections across the United States, including the collections of Forrest Merrill and Bob Anderson, the Smithsonian American Art Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and the Center for Art and Wood. His work was featured in the American exhibit at the Brussels World's Fair in 1958, and his accolades include the American Association of Woodturners Lifetime Achievement Award and the American Craft Council's Gold Medal. Bob Stocksdale often cites James Prestini, a new Bauhaus faculty member and artist who practiced wood turning from 1933 to 1953 before turning to other mediums such as marble and metal, as a major design influence. But he also mentions the inspiration of artifacts for his forms, such as Japanese and Chinese decorated ceramics in the Brundage collection of Asian art. Executing uniformly thin walls of a turn bowl took immense skill and sharp tools, which Bob practiced for most of his career. But he also innovated his edge work, becoming one of the first to preserve live edges on his turned bowls, as seen here on this mesquite bowl in the Forrest L. Merrill collection. The sapwood provides color contrast along the rim, reinforcing the jagged live edge which echoes the form of a cracked eggshell. In this 1987 curling maple bowl, Bob purposely chose a wide, flat rim, slightly thicker than the rest of the bowl and curving in harmony with the wood grain. The effect causes the rim to blend in with the shimmering wood, fooling the eye in the bowl's extension and curvature. Above all else, Bob Stocksdale allowed his respect for wood's integrity to guide his design decisions and creative processes. He spent the majority of his time scouring lumber yards, seeking out rare woods with unusual characteristics for his wood turning. Quote, "When I take up a piece of wood and begin to work with it, one of the main ideas I have in my mind is to try and bring out all of its natural beauty," end quote, Bob said in an interview with the Christian Science Monitor. Ron Roskowitz's book, To Turn the Perfect Wooden Bowl, A Lifelong Quest of Bob Stocksdale, describes his turning process. First, Bob would use a bandsaw to cut out a roughly circular shape from a large piece of lumber, cutting at about a 45-degree angle. He would turn the outside of the bowl first, then the inside, using smaller gouges as the bowl neared its final shape. Stocksdale has turned bowls as thin as 1/16 of an inch, sometimes so thin that the bowl is practically translucent. To preserve the beauty of the wood's natural patterning, Stocksdale kept his finishes clear and avoided dyes or stains. Salad bowls would go through a process of multiple soaks in mineral oil, while decorative bowls were often sprayed with a clear varnish and rubbed with a pumice stone. As a result, Stocksdale produced thousands of bowls, each meant to showcase the inherent patterning and color of its respective wood, pushed sometimes to the very limits of its material in thinness and turn shape. Born in Warren, Indiana in 1913, Bob Stocksdale's first explorations in wood were cultivated in an atmosphere of scrappy invention during the Great Depression. At a young age, Stocksdale staked a claim on an old outbuilding on his family's farm and started collecting old tools simply for the experience of trying them out on wood. Among these was a pocket knife given to him by his grandfather, which he would use to whittle. From crude birdhouses to furniture refinishing, in addition to his farm work, he eventually held jobs at the Caswell Runyon Company, seen here, making cedar chests, and also worked at a factory that made wooden baking equipment. He also recreated furniture pieces from magazines and real-life examples, teaching himself through mimicry. Even without electricity, Stocksdale still managed to rig up a lathe, In his words, quote, "Such a crude lathe that I didn't even consider making any bowls on it. I operated that with a Maytag washing machine, a gas engine from a Maytag washer," end quote. While only used to make replacement parts of antique furniture like spindles and table legs, and occasionally baseball bats for kids in his neighborhood, Stockdale's first lathe was certainly reflective of his experimental nature. Stocksdale turned his first bowl, made of cherry, during his stint at a conscientious objector camp in Valhalla, Michigan in 1942. While not particularly motivated to conscientious objection for religious reasons, as more traditional groups such as Quakers or Mennonites were, the political leanings of his pacifist older brother had great effect on him. Bob's childhood household was often full of conversations around war alternatives. The primary directive of the camp was forest service work, replanting white pine trees in once forested areas that had been timbered after the Chicago fire to repair the damaged city. After the director of the camp learned of Bob's woodworking skills, he was taken off tree planting and given jurisdiction of the camp's well-supplied woodshop. Overly qualified to repair buildings and erect new ones at the camp. For example, rumor has it that Bob went above and beyond when the order for a new outhouse was issued, building an intricate structure complete with hardwood maple flooring. Bob used his access to plentiful tools and time on his hands to turn bowls. He also began seeking different varieties of wood, beginning networks of access that would last him his entire career. Sam Maloof, furniture designer, friend, and collaborator of Stocksdale's, remembers him as, quote, "a free spirit and a very straightforward man. He either liked you or he didn't, and he let you know it," end quote. This energy can be sensed in Bob's matter-of-fact way of discussing his time as a conscientious objector. To him, his anti-war beliefs were straightforward, not evaluated as radical. While in Michigan, his bowls were seen on a camp visit by Helen Winnemore, a Quaker woman who ran a craft retail shop in Columbus, Ohio. Quite taken with Bob's bowls, she immediately placed orders for more of his work and gave him some mythical advice. Quote, "Keep up the quality. I don't care about the cost. I want the quality," end quote. Their business relationship and friendship would endure even as his success grew, for it was only the beginning of his retail opportunities where he could sell his work. Gump's, a department store in San Francisco, began carrying Bob's bowls in 1945, followed by Neiman Marcus. While initially wary that the high price of Bob's salad bowls would be prohibitive for his commercial success, customers were taken by the eye-catching arrangements of his polished, shaped bowls. After Gump's began selling Stockdale's work, he relocated to Berkeley, California, where he would work for the rest of his life from the basement of a Victorian house. His first solo exhibition was in 1958 at the Long Beach Museum of Art, and its success encouraged Bob to make wood turning his full-time job. Bob Stockdale's turn bowls were a rare thing in contemporary craft. They were profitable, but this would not detract from his groundbreaking effects on the world of wood art. He elevated wood turning from its perceptions as a functional industrial mode of practice to an internationally accepted form of artistry. Before elaborating further on the development of the field of woodworking from Stocksdale's work to Humaira Abid's, I'd like to share one brief insight from a Smithsonian Archives of American Art interview with Stocksdale in 2001. During his time running the woodshop at the conscientious objector camps, Stocksdale recalls instructing a group of women to turn bowls. The way he tells it, quote, "A lot of the fellows' wives moved close by. I taught a bunch of the wives how to turn bowls there and earlier in Michigan. We didn't try to sell very much. The wives would come into the workshop too, and they'd sometimes turn various and sundry things," end quote. I found this story compelling not only because it shows that the legacy of Bob Stocksdale includes instruction and support of women in woodworking, but also that women in woodworking have arrived in this field in ways that are not always visible to us today and not always well documented in historical record. Evidence from interviews with Bob Stocksdale and his wife, renowned textile artist Kei Sekimaki, suggests that Bob had a fundamental understanding of the uphill battles many craftswomen and female artists have faced in the 20th century. Well aware that Kei's intricate works of textile art, such as her monofilament hangings, which are pictured here, took more time to produce than Bob's turned bowls. He often defended her time to make them on her behalf. If visitors dropped by their house unannounced to see the couple at work, Bob would often bluntly say, "Don't bother Kay." Their joint respective show in 1993, Marriage and Form, combined their work and exemplified their lifelong creative and romantic partnership. It seems in the spirit of Bob Stocksdale's quiet, unassuming sense of equality and in the tenacity of Humaira Abid's entry into woodworking that I offer space in this lecture for important but perhaps lesser known female woodworkers in the 20th century, in addition to their better known male peers, such as Sam Maloof, Art Carpenter, David Ellsworth, and Ruud Ozolnik. Humaira is not being honored today simply because she is a woman in woodworking, but her work deals so intimately with the experiences of women that this history is a crucial part of her work's contextualization. In the early 20th century, the engine-powered lathe was initially viewed as an industrial piece of equipment without opportunity for the individual handwork that collectors of craft value so highly. Wood turning was commonly taught in industrial arts programs in the 1920s to make furniture legs and spindles, and was usually reserved for factory production. I'm getting an echo. James Prestini and Bob Stocksdale, chiefly, whose works can be seen here, were of the first to rebrand wood turning through their experimentation in the 1930s as part of a larger suite of the do-it-yourself movement in America. However, their work quickly rose in opinion for their creation of elegant, thin-walled bowls, revolutionizing the lathe as a technology for wood art. Turned objects in the mid-20th century were modernist forms, crafted with simplistic but beautiful fluid shapes in mind. Scandinavian modernist woodworkers in post-war Europe, with their proclivity for simple salad bowls made of pine and eventually teak, had great impact on future American wood-turned shapes in the 1950s and 1960s. While highly interested in natural finishes, wooden bowls were smoothed in aspiration of perfect, unmarred fluidity. By the 1970s, forms were less guided by modernist design and more in tune with the material qualities of individual woods, showcasing natural flaws such as burls and insect damage. Ruud Ozolnik, who ran the Industrial Arts program at Berea College and helped establish the Southern Highland Handicraft Guild, reflected this in his work, seen here on the left. Melvin Lindquist, who was particularly experimental with turning spalted wood, which is wood discolored by fungi, was also a major player. The increase in popularity and the development of craft networks centered around wood turning, in turn, inspired a rise in organizations and institutions formalizing these networks. The first Woodturning Symposium, hosted in Philadelphia in 1976, brought together like-minded woodturners in the same space for the first time, inspiring a future generation of work from woodworkers like David Ellsworth, who's pictured here. In addition to working with burls and other natural wood characteristics, Ellsworth turned hollow forms with small openings, like the vessel seen here, through a process called blind turning. The Woodturning Center was founded by brothers Albert and Alan Lakoff in Philadelphia in 1986, which we now know as the Center for Art in Wood. With over 1,000 objects in its collection, the Center for Art in Wood's collecting scope has expanded in definition and forms to better represent the wide variety of contemporary wood art created today. As both a symbol of industrial technology and an expressive tool for the burgeoning field of woodworking as craft, the lathe was commonly male-operated, and this is reflective for woodworking at large as well. The American Craft Inquiry's 2018 article, "This Is My Work: The Rise of Women in Woodworking," documented the varied experiences of women entering the field of woodworking, particularly the difficulty in gaining acceptance in such a male-dominated field, even as new technology has given greater access and tools for their own success. Anne Carlisle writes, quote, "Women woodworkers have found themselves excluded on both fronts, excluded from nostalgic, patriarchal notions of the past, as well as from the tech sector work considered vital to shaping the future. Whereas women were assumed to be physically unable to handle large slabs of wood or operate woodworking machines, now others doubt their ability to comprehend sophisticated computer-driven design. Despite these obstacles, women have been and are still very much contributing to the field of wood turning and wood art. To the left, the 1842 publication, The Handbook of Turning, while published anonymously, has been attributed to a Miss Gascoigne and is possibly the earliest woodworking publication by a female author. The woodcut print frontispiece depicting the author was reportedly done on a lathe. To the right, African American women received formal training in woodworking at the Hampton Institute in 1900. In the 20th century, many female wood artists informally learned their craft through a male family member or friend, or more formally through an art or woodworking school. Their contributions have simultaneously furthered forms through their material innovation and paved the way for future female woodworkers. Robin Horn manipulated turned wood structure to mimic stone surfaces, first exhibited in her geode series, seen here. She learned wood turning from her brother-in-law in the 1980s and is still practicing today. Virginia Dotson primarily turned laminated wood to convey the rocky landscapes of the American Southwest, as she conveys in Dune Series number 3, seen here, through her alternating striations of ash, wenge, and walnut. Judy Kinsley Mckee, who received a degree in painting from the Rhode Island School of Design in 1966, but was a self-taught furniture maker, has resolved to produce unique furniture pieces inspired from classical antiquity as well as folk art forms. Betty Scarpino's expressive wooden sculptures focusing on lines and form instigated transition away from more traditional bowl-like forms in the wood art world, for which she has earned an international reputation. And Wendy Maruyama, a self-described woman in wood who combines ideologies of feminism and craft process, has committed to messages of social practice through her woodworking and mixed media, such as transfer imaging, which can be seen here in her series EO 9066, on exploration of Japanese internment camps. While a few of these women, especially in the beginning of their careers, once expressed a wish to be evaluated solely for the execution of their craft, not their gender, many have come to the conclusion that their identity cannot be separated from the art they create, and their visibility in the wood art world is crucial to making the field more accessible for women. Asked about her experiences as a woman in a male-dominated field, Humaira Abid said, quote, "Growing up in a patriarchal society, we are discouraged from talking about many topics. I was always interested in women's issues, stereotypes, and taboo subjects such as puberty, fertility, and sexual relationships. My family was relatively open-minded. Girls were treated equally to boys and had all the same opportunities. Maybe that's why I was allowed a voice and my own point of view, which led to this passion, to give a voice to others who are not able to speak or stand up for themselves," end quote. From Bob Stocksdale's first turn bowl in 1942 to the work of Humaira Abid today, the field of wood art and varieties of form, material manipulation, and messaging have expanded and transformed. But many common values remain between Stocksdale's and Abid's work, in particular the care and attention paid to wood's material properties and the pursuit of varieties of wood types, as well as their commitment to artistic innovation. Humaira Abid's choice of wood is often determined by local sourcing. In Pakistan, she primarily used common woods such as mahogany for the added challenge of working a notoriously difficult hardwood, as well as pine for color contrast. After relocating to Seattle, her access to wood brokers allowed her range to expand, and she has now produced works in multiple exotic woods, including this pair of wenge scissors. She often produces the same object in multiple wood types before settling on a final form, refusing to compromise her vision until the correct one is found. Humaira's deep knowledge of wood's material properties allows her to mimic everyday forms in almost unbelievable detail, fooling the eye. In her work, Borders and Boundaries, a fence made of carved mahogany barbed wire required over 6 months of technique development and well over a year to execute fully. But the results of her innovation display wood coaxed into an entirely new shape. Over 400 feet of carved barbed wire makes up her 30-foot long fence, and the final outcome consistently deceives and moves viewers with powerful commentary on the constructed barriers of violence and restriction many refugee women face. Delivering her own advice for crafting such complex shapes, Humaira says, quote, "You have to work hard, you have to know your direction, and you have to know there is no shortcut. You have to be patient," end quote. Her advancements echo the innovation of Bob Stocksdale as he perfected his technique of natural live edges on his turned bowls. Whether conveying a wrinkle in a folded shirt or the bulge of a plastic bag, Humaira's manipulation of grain to convey drape, shadow, and curvature is astounding. Humaira says, quote, "The natural grain of the wood adds an organic quality since my sculptures mostly depict manufactured objects," end quote. In shaping her objects, wood's material qualities are carefully considered to draw out the best form. Aside from her signature red stain, Humaira generally leaves natural finishes on her pieces, allowing the wood surface to lend color and three-dimensionality. In her series Breakdown in the Closet and Searching for Home, wood grain contributes to her highly detailed renditions of textiles and wood. Grain conveys the drape, shadow, and basic weave structure of fabric, adding dimensions for further embellishments such as carved embroidery panels, lace trim, and wrinkles. Humaira's many textile pieces, some of which are made of incredibly hard wood species, still manage to convey movement and flexibility. I found Humaira's rendering of textiles particularly striking, not only because the execution fooled my eye more than once when I encountered it in person in her Searching for Home exhibition at the Center for Art and Wood this spring, but also because of the symbolic ramifications of creating textile forms rendered in wood. Historically, textiles are mediums most associated with the work of women and the bodies of women. Women in numerous cultures around the world have been responsible for textile creation, care, and repair. Intimate garments leave behind evidence of female bodies, while household textiles are often passed along familial lines. The stories of women, both historic and contemporary, are often expressed in textiles, but as a medium, they are one of the first objects to disappear due to use or age. And with their disappearance, their historical messaging also vanishes. Whether as an Islamic prayer rug, an embroidered shirt, or a pair of bloodied underwear, the wood grains in Humaira's work contribute to mimic fabric, and the qualities of flow and fragility in a piece of fabric now gain longevity and hardness in their wooden renderings. Looking at these objects, wood has become feminine. Humaira has deliberately broken patriarchal barriers by pursuing sculpture in art school, well aware that it would be a male-dominated field, and she remains committed to expressing diverse but universal experiences of women in her wood sculpture. Her wooden textile forms seem just as determined to deliver highly personal stories of women's experiences in relocation, in domestic settings, in environments of violence, in relationships, and in motherhood, outlasting other mediums. Humaira's messaging through wooden mimicry of everyday objects relies on what material cultures scholars uphold in their artifact analysis: the belief that everyday objects can be universally interpreted as vessels of intimate human experiences. In other words, a bowl is never just a bowl. When asked about her proclivity for everyday objects, Humaira says, quote, "I like to surprise people. That's the reason I work with everyday objects and transform them in wood. Most of the objects I depict are old and worn rather than brand new. For me, the objects are not just objects. They are extensions of people, feelings, and memories," end quote. Much of memory made through objects, aside from creation and consumption, is through use. Humaira honors that in the very construction of her objects. Here, a turned and carved tricycle made of pine can actually pedal. Her ebony scissors open and close. The rings at the end of her pacifiers flop up and down. There is a mimicry of function and use, not just of form, in Humaira Abid's work that preserves the human memory imbued in objects. Bob Stocksdale's work was often described as functional elegance. He never wished for his creations to lose the potential for use, and useful things were allowed to be beautiful. After completion of each bowl, Bob would add his signature, the wood type, and the source of the wood to the base, as if to mark his relationship with its creation before passing it on to another. I would argue that perhaps he and Humaira both recognize the importance of use as a key to memory, both in human experience and in art reflecting that human experience. I'd like to conclude with a reframing of the piece of advice Helen Whittemore once gave Bob Stocksdale. Quote, "Keep up the quality. I don't care about the cost. I want the quality," end quote. When Bob was just starting out, his commercial success and eventually his artistic success hinged upon the quality of his craftsmanship and the respect for his materials. The implied cost for Bob was monetary. I'd like to slightly reframe this advice for Humaira, who, as I hope my lecture has shown today, fully embodies the same commitment to quality craftsmanship and the integrity of wood in her wood sculpture. The cost, though, for Humaira is more complex. It is no small feat to intentionally enter a traditionally male-dominated field as a woman, nor is it easy to stay vulnerable in the process of creating art so integral to that maker's identity. To put it simply, struggling against patriarchy takes a toll. Humaira has often said that she thrives on challenges, and I sincerely hope that as her career continues, the cost of pursuing it, whether emotional, mental, or financial, pales in comparison to the support she receives. For the art she creates not only pushes the field of wood art forward, but it lends voices to countless women around the globe who see themselves in her and her work. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Emily. That was fantastic and thought-provoking and loaded with yummy, nutritious insights. I would like to invite Humaira to say a few words, but before I do that, I just want to remind everyone, if you have a question for any of the speakers, for Humaira or for Emily or for Tom, or for anyone here with us today, you're invited to write your question in the chat section. And then Katie and I will moderate that after Humaira says a few words. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to our honored awardee for 2019, Humaira Abid.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Emily, thank you. It made me emotional. It reminded me of my journey and all the challenges I have faced. But when a day like this makes me realize it was all worth it. So I appreciate that. I truly appreciate that. I went to art school against the wishes of my family. They didn't see art as a profession, but more like a hobby. But it was something that I was passionate about. I thought it was my calling. So I went against the wishes of my family and went to art school. When I was in art school, everybody started warning me not to take sculpture as your major. It's physically challenging. And also living in a Muslim society where considering three-dimensional objects is like going against religion was an additional challenge for me. I got so many warnings that I said, I have to see what's so tough about it. So I took it as a challenge. And when I was in sculpture department and I was working in different mediums, I realized there was a lack of women's voice in the medium of wood. And it was very clearly male-dominated medium. And I was passionate about social issues, taboos, and especially women issues. So I thought, what better medium than a male-dominated medium to talk about these issues? So I took it as a challenge. And on this journey, it has not been an easy journey for me. It has been challenging, but it has been rewarding. And I never wished for an easy path anyways. So if I have to go back in time and do it all over again, I'll do it all over again the same way. I'm very honored and humbled to receive this award. Art gave me wings, and this award has added feathers into my wings so I can fly higher and reach new heights. So I appreciate that, and I want to thank you. I want to thank Center for Art and Wood. I want to thank all the jurors who have nominated me, and I'm honored and humbled to be associated with the legacy of Bob Stocksdale. And I just want to thank everyone for the support that I have received over the years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Humaira. We're learning from you all the time. And so if anyone has any questions, I think there are not, maybe it's intimate enough that you can all unmute yourselves and just speak up. We'll do this Middle Eastern style. So no one raise their hand, just speak out. And I'll, I guess, launch into a conversation by, first of all, I'm gonna pick on Meryl Salen, who's here with us tonight, who is also an incredible, has made an incredible contribution to the field of wood turning, not only as an artist who has broken all the rules in the field, and as such has provided a source of mentorship and education, but also appreciation and awe for your body of work, Meryl. So it's wonderful to have you here for this. And also, not only that, but Meryl was a good friend of Bob Stocksdale's and took part in that Berkeley community and remains a very close friend of Kei Sekimaki. So Meryl, I'm gonna pick on you to start out, and just I'd love to hear your thoughts on the discussion and on Humaira's work, or anything that you'd care to mention on this auspicious evening.
Oh, you really put me on the spot.
I owe you a drink later.
Yes, you do. Too bad we're so far apart. Yes. I love Humaira's work. I first got a postcard from you, and I remember showing it to my son here. I said, look at this work. It's so fantastic. Because at one point in my life, I did some very quiet work representing a period in time when I had surgery and I was locked up. But the field of wood turning is sort of separate in a way. Bob was an unusual man. I think his conscientious objector thing really framed who he was. And I was supposed to interview him at one point for a magazine article about his work. And I ended up spending writing in the article and spending time just talking about that period of his life and how he became a CEO from where he lived. And I just loved those stories. I was married to a man who fought in World War II and was very liberal, had an interesting background. And so between Bob and my husband and Kay, it just became a circle for me, a home for me. And that was very special. James Prestini was another Berkeley character, but he and Bob were so different that they only lived a few blocks from each other, but I don't think they ever saw each other. It was completely separate. But I think the field for women, I think coming from a place like Humaira did, that would be very different than it is in the States today. Today, there are so many women working in the field. You have Suzanne Kahn out there somewhere tonight, who's also doing amazing things as a woman in the field.
Yes. Yes. So we're going to pick on her next.
Okay. So I don't know. I don't know what to say. I've just done my thing. I just did my thing. One of the things, though, in the early days, I must say, was sort of funny. Rudy Solnick and Melvin Lindquist. So in the beginning, I had 3 children at home, and my husband got sick when I was young, and I would disappear from working. And I remember Rudy and Melvin advised me that I cannot disappear like I did periodically. And I remember thinking, Oh, easy for you to say. You're a guy. You're not a woman. You're not the one taking care of the children. And I do think that has, I don't know whether that still affects women today, but certainly in my case, that affected my career a lot. I would just disappear for periods of time because of obligations. And then when I had the time, I came back full force. And I hope that has changed for women today, that responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
I
Mary.
will just say one thing here about additional responsibilities for women, and it's actually valid. It's still valid. There are additional responsibilities. That's why you have to be that much more passionate about it. For
Yeah.
me, for me also, I have a daughter who is 8 years old, and I have other responsibilities too. Um, every day is a challenge, and I take it as a challenge. And I just push myself, even when there is a day that I don't feel good. I make myself, I actually push myself to go sit in my studio, even when I'm not working or I'm not feeling well. So it gives me energy, and often it happens that I feel like working again. And that's why I prefer to have my studio part of my home, so I
Right.
can, step out, take a small break, do something, some chore, and come back and start working again. You know, so you have to design your daily activities around the work, but it's every day is a new challenge, and
No,
one day
you're
at a
right.
time.
You're right. I was just remembering when I was in graduate school, my granddad, this nice old man, said to me, "So Meryl, when you finish, will you finally stay home with your family?" And I thought, no, I won't. But having a studio at home helped a lot, because when I had a studio away from my home, and then my husband got sick. And so by moving it home, I could be home, but I could also step out into that place. And I used to say that place saved my marriage, because I had my private space. I could go hide, I could work. It was mine. And I really didn't want to share it. I never wanted to share it with anybody. It's my space.
Yeah.
Yes, I do understand just going out there and sitting there, Humaira. Yes.
Thank you. There were additional challenges when I talk about coming from a society where there are additional challenges. So I'll give you one more example. When it's a time of, everybody tries to do matchmaking and introduce you to someone. And I was annoyed at that time because I always knew that it will have to be my choice. And one thing was most important for me, that I will never marry someone who will not let me work or not support my passion. So that was this is one of the additional challenges I had to face, uh, that I had to make sure that my passion continues. I'm able to work and push myself.
Well, your work is phenomenal. So you've done an amazing job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have received a lot of warnings, and people were unsure, working in a medium of wood, which is used for centuries, if I will be able to do something with it, or maybe push into the contemporary world, art world. And I envisioned a day like this, when my work will be recognized and appreciated, and I will be able to do something new and innovative with it. So I appreciate all the recognition, and it makes me emotional. It makes me really emotional, and it makes it all worthwhile. All the challenges, it's all flashing back in my eyes. But it's been a rewarding journey, challenging but rewarding journey.
Thank you.
Well, getting an award from somebody like Bob, who was such an honorable man, and Kay, I think you both go together very well. It's very nice.
Thank you.
We have a question from Molly Conti, and I'll just read it out here. This is for Humaira, and this is a question specifically about your work. And Molly would like to know about the red color, the red stain that you apply to some of your pieces. And she'd like to know or have a deeper explanation about the symbolism of the blood. And she asks, does this connect to your struggles as an artist or persecution in your own life? Or is it something broader?
So there is one fun fact here. My family wanted me to be a doctor because I was good in studies, and that is one of the professions which is considered respectful. I could not even see blood. I actually pass out if I see blood. So I tried, I took pre-medical, but I just could not do it. And I told my family, especially my father, and I said, this is not something I think I can pursue. In my work, why I use red, I had multiple miscarriages a few years back. And I'm passionate about talking about taboos and stereotypes and subjects and topics that people are not openly discussing. Miscarriage was one of the topics. When I was going through, I tried to talk to even my friends, my close friends, some of them who I knew have had miscarriages, and they would not feel comfortable talking or discussing that topic. So I decided to do a full series on this theme. And that was the first time I used red in my work. And red, for the reason I also use duality of meaning in my work. Red is a color which is all associated with love and marriage, as well as death. And it's the color of blood, so associated with pain as well. So that's how I started using red, and I still feel passionate about it whenever I'm talking about a loss, talking about death, talking about even love. I use that color.
Oh, thank you, Vicki. I appreciate you sharing that with us. It's really impactful.
I have a question for Emily. I was really intrigued by your analysis of Humaira's work and the grain pattern connecting to fabric and textiles. And I was also thrilled that you did that, because that speaks to your background as a scholar and as a researcher. And I'd love to hear a little bit more, maybe from a personal kind of description about the inspiration behind that analysis.
Sure. I mean, I felt like I could not resist talking about it, because when I saw the exhibition Searching for Home in person, my jaw was just on the ground. And now you remember walking me around, and I was looking at that rug and the shirts folded in the suitcases, and I was just blown away that wood could be manipulated in that way to execute a material that I love and study. And so it was a real treat to think deeply about what it meant to execute textiles in wood. Because often I lament when I'm looking in collections, trying to imagine what textiles look like in their prime, or, pre-damage, because they are so quick to fade away. And I just feel like Humaira's work encapsulated, textiles in use, frozen in this moment of time, but they will outlast, what a t-shirt would have if they had been in textile form. And it just felt like it was memorializing the history of women in a material way that it feels so fleeting when I study it in textiles. And in wood, it was just awe-inspiring to see it in that form.
Particularly when you pulled out and detailed the carvings of lace and the depictions of lace, which is a craft in its own form, and a very, very intricate kind of practice. That's a career in and of itself with its own histories. I thought that was really insightful. And Humaira, I'd also love to hear your thoughts about that, because the level of I think sometimes, unless people come into the space where your work is shown, they don't understand fully the level of detail that's brought into your work. And I think maybe it's easier to read it in one of your paintings. But when you look at the edging of a bra form, or that kind of lace front of the shirt that's folded up in the suitcase, and of course one of my favorites, the rolled up kilim carpet, that level of detail it's meaningful in our grasp of the object as and in its objecthood, but it's also, I think there is an emotional level to it because we're all familiar with textiles. We're all familiar with the feeling of cloth in our hands and the way we use it and wear it on ourselves. But I think it also goes beyond the general meaning and topic of the discussion and shows a delight and a love and a passion for making, for the sake of making, for the sake you can achieve this level of verisimilitude in your work, and so you're going for it.
There are a few sides to it. First, in the beginning, when I started looking around, I started traveling and looking at works in wood. And I clearly noticed they were male dominated. And sometimes I didn't have to read to know if it was done by a male sculptor. I could actually see visually. There is a difference, I feel, how we see details and how male artists to look at the details and what kind of subject matter, what kind of imagery they depict. That was something I missed as an artist. And when I was working, not just this is something I wanted to pay attention to, bring a woman's voice into the medium, but also because I'm trained as a miniature painter too, along with sculpture. So I look at the details are very important for me. Like you won't even imagine after doing the main piece, how much time I spend on the details. Details like each and every like little tiny stitch line, lace line, all the details, even putting a small stain on it, everything is important for me. And that's the stage, which is one of the most important stages for me. So this is intentional. This is something which I think I bring into the medium of wood as a woman. And this is also something I use to push the boundaries of medium.
Yeah, it certainly does achieve that. I wanted to, if Suzanne is willing to or able to speak, I'd love to hear her thoughts as well, because particularly as Suzanne is a woodturner based in Philadelphia who has opened her practice to social projects and introducing woodturning to women and girls, much like we saw in Emily's lecture. And I was reminded of Bob's, that mention of Bob introducing it to the wives of the woodturners. I wasn't aware of that incident. So I don't know if Suzanne is willing to talk a little bit about her experience as a woman in the field as well. I know that she's taken a lot of risks in building her career and reputation as a maker and an artist. And if she's not, we'll just loop up back with her later. But I want to make sure everybody else has a chance to ask a question from any of us. We're a small enough group now, we can have a rousing kitchen table discussion. Or not, or I'm going to start picking on people. Okay. I'm going to start with Albert. Albert? Or not? Okay. I'm going to, John.
Okay.
Oh, good. Hi, Albert.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, how are you?
All right, let me fix.
You're good.
Okay. Well, I think it's tremendous that we're carrying on this tradition, this award, and it's a great year to pick a mirror because we're celebrating the year of the woman. And I didn't know of her work, quite frankly. Thank you, Nava, for putting this in the world of on her work. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay. Well, thank you for bringing her work to the center's attention through that magnificent exhibition. I asked this question before, why did she use wood? And because she's very skilled and in making objects, I would wonder why she wouldn't work in ceramics. So can Humaira tell us why she chose wood over any other material?
So why I chose wood as my main medium?
Yes. Yeah.
So one of my main reasons was when that I felt wood was male dominated, as well as South Asia is known for wood carving, mostly for furniture making and for building purposes, but there is a lot of woodwork, but mostly it's considered craft. And I felt I could do something new with it. So my both main mediums, wood and miniature painting, have been used for a long time as a craft medium. And I thought I was passionate about them, and I felt I could do something new with them and also bring a woman's point of view, because I was missing a woman's point of view in these mediums.
Well, you're definitely adding a new voice to our field. There are other men and women that do trompe-l'oeil work like you do, but I don't know anybody that's adding the meaning, your life experience into your work like other people are. So a fantastic choice, fantastic work.
Thank you. I call myself a storyteller, so I like to tell stories, and that's what I do through my work. So having a meaning behind every piece is very important for me.
Fantastic. Is there anyone else here who happened to know Bob Stocksdale personally?
Well, I know.
Clearly.
Yeah, but it would have been interesting. You said it'd be great to bring Humaira and Bob together. Bob pretty much said what was on his mind, and I think that he would have admired your work. He once, I'll just repeat one story, but he wouldn't say that about your work. But he once saw somebody's work and said, you know, I can make a nice bowl out of that piece. I think he would have loved your work for the craftsmanship and the thinking behind it. And especially Kay, his wife, hopefully she'll get to see the work. She would really enjoy it.
I think so too.
This is Patricia. I just had a thought as we're thinking of, I think I heard earlier Emily speak about Bob Stockdale and his focus on function and bowls and bringing the art and how it was functionally focused. In a sense, I'm looking at Humaira's pieces as the function there is the story. And they are functional pieces, but it's the storytelling that's now become the function as opposed to a bowl or something that's used as a use. It's a book, you read it.
That's an important insight, and Humaira and I have spoken before publicly and also between ourselves about the fact that in all the carvings they depict these household or banal everyday objects that we encounter and we use in our everyday lives, but she never depicts the user in any of these objects or scenarios. The human figures exist in the paintings only, but never in the carved objects. And Humaira, you have distinct thoughts about that too.
Yeah, I mean, even as a teacher, I have seen a lot of figurative work. It's not something that scares me. It's something out of choice. I wanted to have an additional challenge for myself. For example, if I would have to make mother and child, how can I make mother and child without actually making mother and child? And that's something an assignment that I would give to my students also. You cannot use a figure, you cannot make mother and child, but you have to depict it through something else. So it's more of a conceptual exercise. And this is something I enjoy through my work. And actually, I didn't think intentionally about it for a long time, but just in last few years, I've realized why objects are important for me, and they're more than object, they're extension of people. Because even as a child, I would take my mother's scarf and wrap around and hug it and go to sleep if she was not home. I could smell her and I could feel her touch. So her scarf was not just a scarf or an object for me, it was an extension of her. So that's how I think I got attached to objects, and I look at them as extension of people rather than objects.
I think we talked also about how in entering these sculptural installations, when they're installed in galleries, you can empathize with the scenarios that are being depicted by placing yourselves in those scenarios directly because of the scale and the familiarity of the objects.
Yeah, and I actually, this is something I pay attention to. And I think about what kind of experience I'm giving to my audience when they enter into the space. What should be the placement? What should be the scale of my installation? So I try to pay attention to the details and give a whole experience rather than individual pieces and smaller experiences as a whole, one big experience.
Fantastic. Well, if there are no other questions, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. It's been such a pleasure and an honor to bring together Humaira and to honor her with Bob's legacy in mind, and to invite Emily's scholarly insights and wonderful talk all here. It will be recorded, as you can see, and available for watching in the center's woodshed as well as on Facebook. So you'll be able to see it again and again. And if you have any follow-up questions, be sure to write to me or anyone at the center, and we'll be happy to either forward them on or respond. Thank you, Tom, for your partnership and collaboration, and Albert for setting up this amazing recognition of artists in our field. We need more programs like this to encourage our emerging talent and thinkers in wood, and that's all I have to say for 2019. Stay with us, stay tuned for 2020. And we'll surprise you with whoever the committee decides to award next year. But we just really appreciate everyone joining us tonight. So thank you and be well.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Meryl. Thanks. Good to see you.
I'm so happy you're doing this. This is wonderful.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
And Humaira, thank you for your work. I really do love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll get you together at some point.
That would be wonderful.
It would be really fun. It would be amazing.
Yeah. Next year, maybe.
Next year.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds good.
Good night.
Good night.
All right.